Alrighty, and we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Mile High Insiders. I am Nicholas Kendell, along with Luke Patterson. Luke, how goes it? How was your 4th of July break?
Great. It was great. Got to spend time with family and friends and celebrate a day that was able to just kind of get my mind off of current events for a little bit. Got to talk Broncos, which was awesome, with a lot of friends and family, and hearing the optimism that's in the air for this team right now is just awesome. Everybody's seen the fireworks going off on the Denver Skycam. Well, those fireworks have been going off in Broncos country ever since the draft. So I'm super pumped. We got some huge news we got to get to today, and it's a Tuesday, but it feels like we're just getting started, because when Mike Shanahan is announced as joining the Ring of Fame, that's going to make it a good day, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of information to get to before we dive too much into that. Make sure you guys find us on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP and at Nick Kendell MHH. As you can see, our handles are right there at the bottom there, so you can identify us and come talk to us on Twitter, guys. We are on there a lot, probably too much for our misses to appreciate. Subscribe to our show wherever you listen to these podcasts and leave us a rating. It's not just Mile High Insiders. It's the Huddle Up podcast. It's Dub Valley Deep Divers. It's Building the Broncos. And leave us a rating as well. We really do appreciate that. We take those to heart. Don't miss all of our great off-season content at milehighhuddle.com of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media. So the news of the day, Mike Shanahan, Ring of Fame. It feels like this has been long overdue. Obviously, Mike Shanahan, I would say, is the obvious choice for the best coach of the Denver Broncos, their history. Of course, he was helped by having John Elway at the helm, but I mean, that offense he had was gorgeous, trudging along. It was a great one, and there was a little bit, I guess, of some issues behind the scene with Mike Shanahan and the organization when they parted ways. But it looks like they maybe have buried the hatchet there, so to speak. And now Mike Shanahan's officially announced going to be a member of the Ring of Fame.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, Nick, when you think about it. And I know the first reaction that I had to it was, well, it's about time. And I feel like a lot of echoes in Broncos country are saying that right now of, hey, what took so long? Well, we kind of know that there were some politics in the background, and those things happen. And there's a lot of questions surrounding the trust. And you can go way back when to the dismissal of Mike Shanahan, and things get all kind of murky there. But the bottom line is he's going in as the 34th Ring of Famer for the Broncos, 14 years as a head coach. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings, 97 and 98, with the Denver Broncos. And you can't say Denver Broncos without Mike Shanahan being a part of that history. And you hear players talk about it time and time again. What did it mean to be a Bronco? They're trying to get back on that same pace right now and finding an identity. But those 90s Broncos teams that we grew up watching, those are Mike Shanahan's teams. And his imprint was not only left on those teams, but his coaching tree that's still using a lot of his concepts, and his son, Kyle Shanahan, out there in San Francisco.
Yeah, that zone blocking scheme, that West Coast offense is going to continue to be an imprint on the league for years to come. Obviously, there are new offenses entering the league. You have much more of the spread concepts coming out. You got air raid teams coming on as well. But as long as Kyle Shanahan's kicking and there's teams, Sean McVay, et cetera, that are running that, play action heavy zone stretch type of offense, Mike Shanahan's still going to have a pulse and a heartbeat in this league. So wide impact beyond just the Denver Broncos. So obviously we'll get back to the Mike Shanahan talk here. Let's talk to the chat here real quick. Let's see who's all here today. Douglas Gray, have a great pod, guys. We'll listen later. And Doug, I'm going to hold you to that. Ernie Mays, typically the guy who comments first over here. He's number 2 today on the list.
Number 2 today.
But Denver Broncos number 1. We appreciate that, Ernie. Thanks, Good to see you there. Toy Bafia coming in with his, looks like it's, I can't tell if that's Goku or Vegeta there. I'm ready to rock, boys. Well, based on your Goku/Vegeta picture there, I believe so as well. We got Dave Darlington coming in. Also, somebody's not going to make it today, working late. Hopefully I'll make the pod. If not, I'll watch later. Thank you so much, Dave. Means a lot to us. And Dennis Elliott coming in. Talon Vamp. Mundungus Krevy. That's a great picture. What a name.
I love it.
And Dave coming in. Won't be on the pod tonight. Catch it later. Bronco proud. Dave, you make me proud to be a Bronco and talking football here today. Terry Randall also, Buana Beast, Todd Anderson. Got the gang's all here, guys. John Lebick, Robert Caslow, So we got a good group of people. Kenneth Booker, Kareem Gomez. Man, everybody here excited. We got actually some real news to talk about. Mike Shanahan entering the Ring of Fame. And Luke, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Obviously, you probably don't have every single bit of information here. There's two sides to every story. But can you delve into some of this, I guess we'll call it the politics behind Mike Shanahan, and what led to the delay to him being entered in the Ring of Fame this late after he departed from the Denver Broncos organization?
Sure. Yeah. So to try to just kind of, it's really murky, right? So to try to, for all clerical reasons, I'm going to get everything out there organizationally as best as I can. I'm going to say it. You've got Shanahan on one side and you've got Joe Ellis on the other. And then Mr. Bolin was in the middle. And Mr. Bolin was kind of holding everything together. And, Mike Shanahan, what can't you say about Mike Shanahan? He won 2 Super Bowls for the Broncos. He ultimately, I think, is one of the biggest reasons John Elway developed into a Super Bowl winning quarterback, because it was under Mike Shanahan's tutelage as opposed to Dan Reeves. That's a really big thing for me right there. But when you start looking at the dismissal of Mike Shanahan and you start hearing some rumors, with regards to the trust and, was Mr. Bolin's health 100%, that really raises a lot of red flags. Now, for us in the media, we're trying to sift through it all, but looking at it as a fan, you've pretty much got a coach that I thought, at least when I was a kid, would be unfireable. I never thought I would see the day that Mike Shanahan was ultimately dismissed from the team, just because it felt like he's the legend. I mean, him and John Elway, they got it going. Even after John Elway with Jake Plummer, Mike Shanahan was able to take them to the AFC Championship game. But at that time, it felt like Joe Ellis and Pat Bolin wanted to steer the ship into a different direction. That direction ultimately went to Josh McDaniels. We all know how that went. So naturally, there's some sour grapes there. But those things sour over time, Nick. And, you're talking 10 years after that, where Coach Shanahan goes to the Redskins and has some success there with RG3, and then a lot of controversy with RG3, and then kind of fades away. Now you see him kind of living and helping his son live through his dream. And that's something that's really, really important. But last year, Nick, was really cool at training camp because Mike Shanahan was invited back for the first time since he was dismissed. And he was invited back by no other than Joe Ellis. So I like to say that the two men buried the hatchet. For me, I think that Mike Shanahan, he wanted that total control that Mr. Bolin gave him. He earned that trust. But when you've earned that trust, you better put out the results. So I don't know what the personal stuff that could have been is with Joe Ellis and Mike Shanahan. I guess I'd rather not know. But just looking at it, I would say the hatchet is buried. It was pretty amazing to see Mike Shanahan out there at training camp last year with Coach Fangio and John Elway. Those three all standing right together. The only one that was missing, Mr. Bolin, the late Mr. Bolin, but pretty incredible sight to see Mike Shanahan back at the Broncos facility last year after almost 10 years away?
I believe so. That's about right. And I'll be completely honest, guys. I really started digging into the Denver Broncos. It was probably heading into that 2011 NFL draft. That's when it really went beyond fandom to like fanatic, analyst, et cetera, et cetera. So I do remember the Mike Shanahan days, especially 2005 with Jake Plummer, that great run, and then going out there and getting Jay Cutler, finally kind of hitting that reset button, which it seemed like they refused to do for years and years. Mike Shanahan looking for that third ring, chasing a bunch of veterans after that John Elway era, just trying to get over the hump and never seeming to be able to do that. Eventually, it led to his firing. I do think that if I recall correctly, you guys, this is why the chat's incredible. You guys can correct me. There's some history buffs in there in the chat that are probably better at that stuff than I am. But I believe Mike Shanahan was told that after going through multiple defensive coordinators, like year after year, they were firing defensive coordinators because they could not get the defense right. And they were going to fire another defensive coordinator. And Mike Shanahan said, if you fire this guy, I'm gone too. And they said, well, that's your choice. And that led to the mutual parting of the way. So correct me if I'm wrong, chat. You guys are great. That's why we love you here. But that's what I recall. I do feel like maybe it's just a little bit of nostalgia in me. I am a little sad that the Rich Scangarello experiment didn't work, just because that zone blocking scheme, that bootleg offense was so just tied to the Denver Broncos history. I'm excited for Shermer. I think this offense better fits today's NFL. But just for the nostalgia factor, being one of those teams that can run that zone blocking scheme. I mean, we saw it with Kyle Shanahan last year. That would have been fun to watch. But I'm also excited for the direction they're going now. But either way, Mike Shanahan's going down in history here for the Denver Broncos. And man, I wish that they didn't have the falling out that they had, because who knows, maybe then you have Kyle Shanahan here instead of the Vance Joseph experiment. Although maybe then don't get Drew Lock. It's the butterfly effect, like you talked about Josh McDaniels earlier. Well, that era sucked, but it led to Von Miller. It led to John Elway in the front office. It led to Peyton Manning. And here we are today. So, bad things happen, but good things can come from them sometimes.
Well, and it goes a little bit deeper just to add to that. Not only could the Broncos have had Kyle Shanahan, they very well could have had Mike back. That was a very realistic position that the Broncos were looking into, specifically John Elway. And basically, Vance Joseph's fate was in the air at midnight. We've all read the reports, the meetings at Elway's and Shanahan Steakhouse here in Denver. Joe Ellis ultimately nixed the deal. So again, kind of showing a little bit of his opinion as the boss of the Denver Broncos. And that opinion was, let's not bring Mike back. Let's go in another direction. So it's ancient history now, but it's so great to see that coach is going in there. I want to hear about some of your favorite memories with Mike Shanahan, Nick, and I want to open it up to the chat too, because one of the first things I remember, and when you say Mike Shanahan, the Denver Broncos, I like to think about the Raiders, because he brought, for me, the Raider hater out. I remember growing up as a kid, and it didn't have to be Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. It just made it that much more special. But if it was a Sunday morning game in Oakland, I'd be glued to the screen. Everybody would have their Raider hater gear out, and I still, to this day, as a grown man, going on 30 years old, hate the Raiders so much and everything that they stand for. And I think a lot of that has to do with Mike Shanahan and his untimely dismissal from the Raiders by Al Davis. And correct me if I'm wrong, chat, I think that the Raiders still owe Shanahan some money. I think there's like $1,000 or $2,000 out there that Al Davis never got to Mike, and it was a very sloppy termination. And the Broncos were taught, you better run up the score when it comes to the Raiders.
Yeah, that's a great memory. I think my favorite memory of Mike Shanahan would have been in Super Bowl 32, where Terrell Davis was having the migraines and he said he couldn't see, and he sent him out there anyway because he knew that the Packers would not believe they were going to run the football unless Terrell Davis was out there. So, I mean, gosh, in today's NFL, this would have been such a controversy, but it's such a weird thing where he sent out Terrell Davis out there. You just have to be on the field, TD. You're fine. If you're on the field, you're not going to get hit. We're going to fake it to you. They'll buy it. Then we can run the play action. And it worked. Yeah. They scored.
Yeah.
So I love that one. Just a
amazing,
crazy old offensive mind. I love it.
Absolutely. And as you're describing that, Nick, I can think of the visual as you're describing it on NFL films, and then Kyle Shanahan standing 15 yards behind his dad with all that wire for his headset, chasing his old man up and down the field. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. That's a huge piece of Broncos history. And
I remember Greek, and then he's like, he can't see.
Yeah.
He can't see.
Yeah, you gotta love Greek, right? That's one of I'd say that's a very personable moment for the Broncos, because you're showing them that audio, you're showing them that trust. I mean, for his player to fully trust him, and granted, TD's a Hall of Famer, heck of a guy on the field, better even off, and you certainly have your athletic abilities that are going to grant you success. He trusted his coach. And he trusted his offensive line. And I'm not so sure that would have flied in today's NFL, especially with the concussion protocols and things of that nature and stuff like that. But you see the loyalty that players have had to Mike. And you see that loyalty was something that meant so much to Coach Shanahan. And he would protect his coaches in addition to his players. And you saw Coach Kubiak and the loyalty that Coach Kubiak had to some of his assistant coaches. And they come full circle and then eventually come back to the Broncos. And I would say a lot of that is because of Coach Shanahan. And that has just got to be one of the best feelings today, if you're a member of Broncos country, to know that your head coach is heading up in the Ring of Fame. And it's coming at better late than never, Nick, but I'm still happy, and I'm not going to let this rain on my parade. Not one bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about if it does rain on your parade, guys, go to huddleuppod.com, get your swag on, and get a hat, because that can protect you from a little bit of rain. We're all here for those corny transitions if you can help it. Make sure you go on Twitter, follow us at MHI_football pod. This is the Mile High Insiders podcast. Typically, we are on Saturdays. Carl is off at the lake with a family. What is that? No, I'm just kidding. 4th of July weekend. You gotta love it. And also follow us at milehighhuddle.com. or at Mile High Huddle on Twitter as well. Let's get to the comment section here. Kenneth Booker coming in. Speaking of Shanahan, wasn't he supposed to come back to Denver after Vance Joseph's first year? I believe there were some, let's call it flirtations in that regard. I think that was also in tandem with the Broncos' heavy interest in Kirk Cousins, who was actually, reports are, who was actually Mike Shanahan's guy at Washington, but Dan Snyder pushed Robert Griffin. So that was definitely a possibility. Obviously didn't come to be. Maybe it's for the best. Who knows? But Mike Shanahan, very close coming back to Denver. At least that's the rumor.
Yeah, it was very realistic. It's more than just a rumor. I can tell you, it's something I've heard from league sources, not just Denver sources, league sources. And man, what a cool thought. But then I like to pump the brakes a little bit too, because you're exactly right. Kirk Cousins comes with Mike Shanahan, and I'm not so sold on the quarterback. I'm even more sold on the coach. So that would have been an interesting dynamic in playing the what if game. Ultimately, you said it earlier, people are going to compare Kyle Shanahan and the vacancy at the Broncos head coaching position. I just don't know that it would have worked. We like to think that it's going to work because it's Shanahan, but that's not always the case. And I think that the Broncos have been very spoiled in the fact that their small circle, and a small circle that they still maintain today, is able to have such rich success. You don't see that everywhere. And you look at the scouting department, Nick, you know scouting better than anybody. The Broncos have one of the smaller scouting departments in the NFL. And a lot of the relationships are based off of trust. And John Elway trusts his guys. And I think Mike Shanahan was one of those few people that John Elway was able to trust very early in his career as the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator, and then coming back and helping him, get through Super Bowl losses with Dan Reeves and things like that. So Coach Shanahan, his significance for the Denver Broncos, this is one of many of his days, but I'm so pumped for Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Thalas Souza coming in. Say hello for Brazil, please. Hello for Brazil. Hello to Brazil. I saw that Jair Bolsonaro, I believe is the president of Brazil, was actually just diagnosed with the disease that's going on right now that we are not allowed to name because of YouTube. But good luck to him. That's scary, obviously. And we have a super chat. Oh, we got Ryan Hamilton coming in. Hell yeah, Luke. All the batteries that got thrown at us in Oakland after Mecklenburg threw a snowball at Al Davis in Denver. That's before my time. So that is a memory that I appreciate you guys digging that up and letting us know, because I needed more reason to hate the Raiders. Granted, now they're in Vegas. They kind of really lose a lot of that, I guess we'll call it culture, that like neighborhood feel that they have. So we'll see. I think it's going to be much more corporate in Vegas, which is good for the Broncos, good for the AFC West, not the Raiders, I think. But we'll see. Although there's no taxes there, or like they don't have any taxes on their players. And I think you probably are going to get more players wanting to go to Vegas in comparison to Oakland. So maybe there's a little bit of a trade-off there.
Yeah, it's always been my understanding with the black hole that was a scary place. And it's not just because of the pirates and the Halloween costumes that go on in Oakland or any of that stuff. It's because players were getting bottles thrown at them, batteries, like, Broncos country's letting us know. And man, what a crazy thought to think that actually happened. And Al Davis, the Al Davis versus Mike Shanahan, the scowl of Al Davis sitting in that press box here in Denver is something that will forever be ingrained in my memory, for better or for worse. But I loved it because that Coach Shanahan hated those Raiders. He wanted to rub it in their face any chance he could, and I still do too.
Yeah. I mean, I hate the Raiders, but man, I do think that their uniform and their logo is pretty classic. And like the classic NFL films, when they talk about the fall wind is a Raider, that's pretty sick. So at least they have a good history, John Madden. That being said, I feel pretty darn good kicking their, I think I'm allowed to say this word, ass every time that the Broncos do end up beating them. So that's definitely good. We got Terry coming in from north of the border here. Nick's Beer Fund. Terry, this one is not beer today, but it rhymes with Schmadka. So appreciate you. It's hot out there. I needed something to kind of cool me down a little bit. And we also got coming in again, use the Force, Luke. Luke, we need some sort of gesture or something when you got to use the Force.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you guys a little nerdy thing about me. I love Star Wars, so that's never going to get on my nerves. And for Father's Day, my little girl and my wife got me a coffee mug with the lightsabers that light up when the coffee gets warm. So I'm a huge nerd. That'll never get old. I appreciate you guys and your donation so much. You guys be sure to go over to @MileHighHuddle on Twitter. You can follow me @Luke Patterson LP, at Nick Kendell MHH. Now, Nick, something else I wanted to talk about was we talked a little bit about the offensive success with Mike Shanahan. And one thing that he's known for is running backs. Tell me a little bit why he was able to have so much success with 1,000-yard running backs. I think it was 11 out of 14 of his seasons. What was the difference between Coach Shanahan and really the rest of the NFL? It seemed like at any point in time, Coach was able to plug X, Y, or Z, you name him, into the backfield, and they'd have different variations of offensive lines. Was it the coaching? Was it the personnel? Was it a little bit of both? Tell me what you're thinking there, because you just don't see this anymore. And I know it's a new league and you don't run the ball, but I mean, 1,000-yard runners just churning out like butter, man. Tell me what you're seeing.
Well, that's a good one there. Alex Gibbs is a big part of it. We see a lot of comments coming in there. Alex Gibbs is also the zone blocking scheme. It's kind of the Broncos played a different style of football than other teams during that era, where you had the big giant hog mollies that would be more of the power blocking scheme. The Broncos went to this zone blocking scheme where they're looking for the guys who are a little bit lighter on their feet, a little bit more coordinated, and just weren't as valued in that more power scheme. So because of that, they were getting guys that in today's NFL, especially for a zone blocking scheme, let's say you could get the guy in the second round, he'd be falling to the sixth round because they just didn't fit what most teams were running. So the Broncos could get better players for their scheme that fit it. And they were also, it's kind of like going up against, I guess you'd call it like an option team in football. Like it's just totally different to prepare against. It's a different style of football. So that just like when you are playing the same style of football, same teams week after week, and then you have this total curveball, like even a knuckleball, you could say, that was this zone blocking scheme, this zone stretch. It was totally different to prepare for. But it also does come back to what I believe is one of the bigger things when it comes to the running games and the running backs specifically is that running backs, despite them being the guys who get the statistical output, they're decently down the totem pole as far as the most important variable for what matters in the run game. I mean, you have the weapons on the outside to create favorable matchups in the box. You have obviously the offensive line. I mean, how good the quarterback is matters a heck of a lot, and just the scheme. I mean, being able to call that run game. You see that with Kyle Shanahan. I mean, who was the running back this year? Mostert. They were able to pull guys out of anywhere because of that scheme. They also are extremely dominant on the edges of that offensive line. I mean, they had two good tackles. Staley retired. Also, arguably the best tight end in football and the best fullback in football. So they can get those guys that are a little bit different and wouldn't fit in every scheme, especially in that 90s team, and make the most of it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's all about fit and it's all about scheme. And I think just to piggyback off of that just a little bit, I would say that Coach Shanahan was able to find talent in those deep rounds. He was able to find talent in the undrafted areas. I think he's very much a part of the Broncos tradition of signing an undrafted free agent every year. He kicked that off. So I think that it's not only with Coach Shanahan is their legacy, but I think that there's a continued tradition even in that sense, where there have been multiple coaches since Coach Shanahan's been here, and yet the Broncos are still pulling deep talent from anywhere, because basically talent can come from anywhere, Nick. You know that. You don't have to play in the SEC to be in the NFL.
That's true, because the Big Ten is better. No, I'm just kidding. I'm out here in Big Ten country. But we're getting some super chats. We're getting a little bit behind here. Let's hit some of these. This is actually a topic. Oh, I think somebody keeps trying to click it. Not me. There you go. Stephen Baumgartner coming in. I see you got your Dove Valley Deep Divers hat there. It looks pretty darn good. Not as good as this Building the Broncos hat, but that's okay. Hey, guys, any word on the Justin Simmons front? Go Big Red. Well, I guess you got me with that Big Ten front there, but Go Big Red, man. Not around here, not up in this house. But Luke, again, kicking it off to you. This was actually going to be our original discussion point today before the Mike Shanahan news came out. So any word on the Justin Simmons front?
Yeah, talked to multiple league sources within this week, really. And it sounds like a deal is going to get done before the franchise tag deadline, which I believe is next Wednesday, July 15th. So traditionally, when you look at John Elway, he gets these deals done, especially with the franchise tags. So he's got that working in his favor. If you go back and check out my Twitter at Luke Patterson LP, I said that he could be the highest paid safety. It doesn't mean he's going to. When I look at it right now, 14.4 million is roughly the average they're thinking he's going to go for on spotrac.com, trying to dive into that a little bit. But for me, it's all about that guaranteed money. If they're going to pay him more guaranteed money than salary and that helps with the cap, go for it. But for all the folks out there, and I know we've gone back and forth a little bit, I just want to just reiterate, John Elway found this guy in the 3rd round from Boston College. And he has not only developed into a starting safety, he's arguably one of the best players on the defense. So everything that I'm hearing suggests that John Elway and Justin Simmons are going to get something done. I like to think it's right before that Wednesday deadline. Sometimes these things can come up to the very last minute. Hoping there's not a fax machine involved. You know, that was Doomerville, right? Elvis Doomerville in Florida.
Yep.
So, you know, it's a throwback day. We're talking Mike Shanahan, so we got to get some Elvis Doomerville in there. But I would definitely say that Justin Simmons is going to be a Bronco, and he's going to get a long-term deal done. I don't know if he's going to be the highest paid, but he's going to be top 3.
And the thing is, with Justin Simmons' contract, the biggest thing that I want to take away, or at least you guys would take away for it, Iowa sucks. Gosh, Steven, coming at me. That hurts, man. Right in the heart. But there's a bunch of really good young safeties in the NFL right now, and I want to be like the Eagles were with the quarterback situation where they were first. You know, like Wentz got a big contract and, oh my gosh, they paid him so much money, this market-setting deal. Well, then, boom, another quarterback gets paid. Boom, another quarterback gets paid. Boom, Patrick Mahomes get paid. So Justin Simmons, if he gets a market-setting deal, I don't think it's going to be that way for that long because you have Jamal Adams coming up really soon. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick coming up soon. Derwin James is around the corner. So I think that if you do pay him that contract, it will be the biggest. I think it should be the biggest or close to it right away. I think the biggest 2 safety contracts in the NFL right now are Eddie Jackson and Kevin Byard. But I think you pay Justin Simmons a year from now, I don't think he's going to be the highest paid safety anymore. And I think you're not going to regret it either. I know that there's some discussion that, you know, Vic Fangio, do you need to have the highest paid safety in the NFL or even the highest paid safety tandem because how good he can get? But when you're paying so little for the offense, I think you can get away with it. And Justin Simmons, I mean, it goes beyond the field impact as well. I mean, Justin Simmons is emerging as that future face of the defense. I make no bones about that. I really think that. So I think pay the guy. You'll be happy about it. And it goes beyond the field. It goes in the locker room. It goes in the community as well.
Absolutely. I echo everything you just said. And it shows to your rookies that you take care of your own. I know that there's been a lot of debate with Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon and all that, but you know what? This is a John Elway draft pick. He was hand-selected. He was found at the Shrine game down in Tampa, where he was the MVP of that game. Another place, Philip Lindsay was there too, you know, a couple years later, Justin Hollins. So these Broncos, they go all over. These scouts, they go all over finding talent. So Justin Simmons, they're going to lock him down in Broncos country. You can look forward to 31 sticking around for many years.
Absolutely. And we got I think it may be John that's in it. John, if you just want to run that, you can. I don't care. I'm clicking around. We got Chad coming in. I honestly think Chad made this super chat as soon as I said the word for donkey, just to give him a hard time. So Chad, thanks for coming in, the boss man. Mike Shanahan will end up in the Hall of Fame. Ring of Fame signifies the first step in that direction. What a day. You know what? I don't want to be the guy who reigns in the parade, speaking of that phrase earlier, but I don't think Mike Shanahan does end up in the Hall of Fame. I know that he was an innovative mind for the league, but I think that because he was unable to win that ring without John Elway, I don't know if he gets in. I think he's the Hall of Very Good, but if he just coming that close and not getting that third ring, that one without John Elway, I think that would have been the icing on the cake, or that one that pushes him over the top. I think he's just going to be just a little too close, but not get over the top.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I want to give you a pushback, but I think the Broncos get the short end of the stick when it comes to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's just the way it is. That's not me being a homer. It's not me having orange and blue glasses. That's just the way it is. Mr. Bolin should have went in long ago. That man was monumental for what he did for not only this game, but the business of football as well. Coach Shanahan is the exact same thing. The guy evolutionized coaching, the way film is studied. It's just crazy to me to think what Coach Shanahan could do in today's NFL, where he doesn't have to rewind a million different things of tape, where he doesn't have to, you take out all those little inconveniences and you've got the iPad at your fingertips. Because, Coach Shanahan's still doing that to this day. He's charting plays. He's finding tendencies. The guy loves football. I got to give a little bit of pushback, though, because right now he's one of 7 coaches in the NFL with 175 career wins and 2 Super Bowl rings. I feel like the other 6 are in the Hall. You've got the late Don Shula. Bill Belichick's going to be there. Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Bill Parcells, and then I don't think Tom Coughlin's in.
Not yet, but he probably will be.
Not yet, but he probably will be. So
unless this Jacksonville experiment blows up.
Yeah, so Coach Shanahan, I mean, the stats are there saying that he could do it. You can definitely make that argument. I like that, you're putting some realism in there, because that's what all the pro football writers are going to say. Him and John are so connected. Switch quarterbacks, all that kind of stuff. I'm not so sure. I think that the two needed each other. It's so easy for us to have these debates. What if Michael Jordan was on, Houston's team with Akeem Olajuwon and everything like that? And it's all these what ifs. And the bottom line is, look what these guys did, and look what, John Elway's continuing to do. So I agree with Chad. Mike Shanahan, he should be in the hall. I'm not going to say first ballot right away. He needs to get in the second, but man, the Broncos don't get a lot of love from the hall, so that's going to be a tough one to get in.
Yeah, for sure. We got some more comments coming in. Joseph Malinowski, what's up, guys? How's everyone doing? It's been a long time. I've missed over a week of programs. Joseph, be better. No, I'm just kidding. Just been extremely busy with work. Hope everyone watching is doing good. Go Broncos, and want to reiterate, hope everyone watching is doing good. I know it's crazy times out there. So let me see. Nick, who was doing the drafting scouting under Mike Shanahan? Whoever did a great job. I think Mike Shanahan, that's another issue with his fall in the Broncos country, is that he went on beyond the coaching duties and got the general manager duties as well. And that made him, it's almost the Bill O'Brien effect, where you're kind of like sacrificing a little bit of the future. You can't see the big picture because you're focused on the immediate needs, the upcoming season, and that weakens you in the future. So I can't tell you who is the general manager in the early years, but I know Mike Shanahan was later on, and that was kind of the beginning of the end, so to speak. Not everybody can be Bill Belichick, where you're the general manager and the coach and succeed.
I want to say, I'm going to take a couple stabs at it, and the chat can correct me if I'm wrong. It might have been Ted Sundquist in there for a little bit, close to the end, and then Rick Smith was also in there. He spent some time with Houston as well with Coach Kubiak, and recently left the Texans. I think he resigned 2 years ago or something like that. He could have ended up with the Chargers. I'm not sure. But yeah, we talked a little bit about that small scouting circle that the Broncos still have. And that goes back to Coach Shanahan. Coach Shanahan loved to take underrated and undervalued guys and polish them up and see if they can be a diamond. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it definitely set a precedent in the league for finding that next great player from nowhere. Everybody thinks the Heisman quarterback's going to come out of college and be the next greatest thing in the NFL, and that's just not the case. Trevor Lawrence. So it's just something that I would really encourage people to think. Mike Shanahan's loyalty was priority number one, because Pat Bolin's loyalty was priority number one. So that small scouting circle, Shanahan had their back, and those guys, they still run together. Bobby Turner, the running backs coach for Mike Shanahan, the Denver Broncos, still coaching for Kyle. And the gentleman, I think, is in his 70s. So you just see that Mike Shanahan's inner circle, super connected. They know football, and they just love it, Nick. They can't get away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys hear any yipping in the background, that's the puppy. Doesn't love his crate the best. Also, Elway was not nearly as successful under Reeves as it was Shanahan. That's a great point, Todd. And I think that thank God for Shanahan, because he made Elway get over the top as well. So you can't write Elway's history without Mike Shanahan coming in also. And we got Andy, go ahead. Oh, this is a long comment, but
yeah, I just wanted to jump in there real quick, and then something that we gloss over and I forget sometimes is that John Elway beat Dan Reeves. Mike Shanahan and John Elway, beat the Atlanta Falcons to win the Super Bowl, and in a huge. Dan Reeves, he takes a lot of slack from a lot of folks, especially here in Broncos country. The Tommy Maddox thing, I'm never going to quite understand that one. And John Elway's famous quote, "How'd that work out?" That one's never going to go. That's a famous drop we're always going to keep. But, to have the courage and the class to walk across the field and shake Mike Shanahan's hand and John Elway's hand after losing the biggest game of his life to a couple men that he didn't necessarily get along with at the end of his career. I think that just speaks volumes of Dan Reeves as well. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's pretty renowned as a pretty good guy and a decent football mind. So we got Andy Bracklavato coming in. Let me poke my eyes up here so I can read down on this one. Hello, guys. I have two memories with Mike Shanahan.
I was at the training camp in Greeley, and I walked into a room where the new logo helmets and jerseys were around me. And I'm thinking 1996. Anyway, Joe Collier, the QB instruction guy, don't know his title. He hung around with Elway at the time. My pint is all the fans there were waiting to see Coach come in after practice. We all looked in wonder as he jogged off the practice field and ran down the city streets of Greeley, Colorado. Andy, appreciate the comments. You always are in here, and we appreciate you joining us for our shows, not just Mile High Insiders, but I've also seen you on the Huddle Up podcast as well as Mile High or Building the Broncos as well. So appreciate the heck out of you there. Go ahead. Bill Walsh shouldn't be there because he had Montana. Bill Walsh also had Steve Young.
Twitchy noob, man. Come on. You're going to hate on Bill Walsh? Like, I don't think I've ever seen this. I'm going to come at you a little bit for this. Like,
he's hating on me. On me for my comment. So I guess
okay, all right. Because Bill Walsh, man, I mean, you can't go after Bill Walsh one bit. I mean, the coaching tree that Bill Walsh to Mike Shanahan to Gary Kubiak you could even connect Andy Reid over there into that own version of the tree. And, maybe that'd be an interesting show to do one day, or a little segment, try to go through some of the coaching history. But no, man, Coach Shanahan, and that's something else fans like to gloss over as well. He's got a 3rd Super Bowl ring when he was the offensive coordinator of, I believe it was the 1994 San Francisco offense. So
did he win a national championship in college as well when he was the offensive coordinator at Florida?
Ooh, I did not know that. I don't know.
Okay, because I remember there's a funny story about him when he was the offensive coordinator at Florida, and he was going to the bars. And I think the drinking age might have been 18 in Florida at that point. I mean, a different time. But the players were getting into the bars and not being ID'd, and then Mike Shanahan wasn't allowed in. They're like, okay, you're not allowed in here. We got to check the ID because he was just such a young looking dude all the time. So I mean, talk about a guy who's been in a lot of places, but he was definitely, I believe, was the offensive coordinator at Florida as well before getting into the NFL.
Yeah, that's what it says. It says, looks like he stayed with the Gators through 1983 before he started his assisting in the NFL with the Raiders. So yeah, that's a good one, Nick.
I know some stuff.
That's going back, and it was all because of the Bill Walsh tweet or super chat, excuse me.
Yeah. So, Darian coming in here, great comment. Great time to remind everyone that Brady is a system quarterback. Amen. No, Peyton Manning is the system. Brady's still great, but assuming we have football this year, I think it's going to be not as pretty as many assume at Tampa Bay this season. Hot take. We'll see. I think that New Orleans team, I think they're the team to beat there. That their defense is being highly slept on.
I agree. I like the Saints. I know Tom Brady and the Bucs and Gronk, and they're the greatest thing ever. No, they're not. You still have Drew Brees and Michael Thomas and Sean Payton, and the Saints. The Saints, man, they're nasty. They're just nasty, and they're right there. I feel for their fans because it seems like they get the short end of the stick every year, and sucks to be a Saint.
Yeah, at least they have that one Super Bowl ring, and because of Sean Payton and Drew Brees, they were able to keep the team in New Orleans following Katrina. So there's been some good years there, but man, they just keep getting so close and then botching it. Like last year, they lost to San Francisco in the playoffs.
Didn't Kevin Rudolph push off of a Saint? Kyle Rudolph, yeah, excuse me.
Yep, he did. And the year before that was the pass interference, and then the year before that was the Minnesota Miracle. Honestly, it was a disappointment last year, just going beyond the Broncos here, that the NFC Championship game was not San Francisco versus the Saints because, my God, folks, Green Bay did not belong on the field with 49ers. That was one of the most ugly NFC Championship games I can remember in a while. I think the Packers are going to regress. They went 13-3 last year. I think 9 wins would make sense for them this season. They played way above their head.
Yeah, and they're distracted right now. They've got their quarterback all spun out over this young kid named Jordan Love. The Packers are a mess, and that's the one thing that the Broncos don't have to worry about right now because it seems like they've got their quarterback in Drew Lock. And when you start to go full circle with this conversation, it feels like, Nick, the optics always suggest that Mike Shanahan was a quarterback whisperer. And he was always looking for the next quarterback. Didn't always work out. You had Brian Greasy. You had, I think it was Danny Cannell. You had a few other quarterbacks before getting Jake Plummer. And he had a lot of success with Jake Plummer, found the talent with Jake Cutler. quarterbacks. That's something that Mike Shanahan just seemed to really pride himself on. And how could you not when you have the young John Elway and then a veteran John Elway, and you've essentially worked your whole career with a professional quarterback, the likes of John Elway. Nick, do you get that same sense that Mike Shanahan was this quarterback whisperer, or he has that aura? At least it feels like that for me.
I think that maybe quarterback whisperer can mean many things, but one thing that I really did appreciate about him is he put his quarterbacks in, didn't give them too much to think about, and put them in position to succeed. There's a lot of half-field reads, especially the bootlegs, and one thing that I absolutely loved about the Mike Shanahan offense. I'm so used to saying the Kyle Shanahan offense, talking about football today, but there was no such thing as too much play action. Some people think that you need to run to set up the play action. Not true. Also, some people think if you run the play action too much, eventually it'll stop it'll stop having its effectiveness. And we haven't reached that yet. We just haven't seen that yet. The data shows that when you run play action, no matter how much you use it, it still works because it holds those linebackers for a second. That's all you need. It holds the pass rushers for a second. That's all you need. So those are big things that I think really help the pass game, help those guys, and also the running game helped it up. And also Mike Shanahan, one of the originals, hashtag running backs don't matter, because he was able to find guys year in, year after out. I mean, gosh, he traded Clinton Portis for Champ freaking Bailey and a pick. I mean, I would love to see what like a analytics-based like program or whatever, like Pro Football Focus would have to say about that if that happened today. Like, just brilliant.
Yeah, makes you wonder what you could get for a guy like Philip Lindsay today, right? And not saying that Philip Lindsay I want him to be traded. I can already hear Twitter blowing up right now. I'm not saying that. But, you look at a running back. What's a running back worth? Now, is Clinton Portis Philip Lindsay and vice versa? No. But you look at these running backs, Nick, and you're exactly right. You got TD, who went 4 times over 1,000 yards. You had Orlando Gary. Mike Anderson went twice. Clinton Portis went twice, Ruben Drones, and then Tatum Bell, who I think they found working at Colorado Mills cell phone kiosk when they signed him. So you're literally bringing in a guy off of the street who is selling cell phones, and now he's 1,000-yard running back in the NFL. It's just absolutely crazy. And Tatum Bell's not the best running back ever. It's the coaching. It's the system. Like you said, we grew up with this offensive line here in Denver that was the lightest in the NFL for, I feel like, at least a decade. And it was just something that's unheard of, because you're seeing these smaller athletic linemen use leverage and smarts to outwit these big nose tackles. And it's something that you just hadn't seen. And I see Garrett Bowles and I'm thinking, man, I wonder what Mike Shanahan thinks of Garrett Bowles, because the athleticism and everything and the body and the profile and everything, that's what Shanahan would be looking for. Now, Shanahan's also expecting, he's expecting you to be prepared and to carry your weight. And that's something that's a little bit different, and all the questions surrounding Garrett Bowles, and he's got the greatest music video in the world, we know. But you're exactly right. You look at the scheme, and Coach Shanahan played to his players' strengths. And that's one of the biggest things that I'll always take away from Mike. You look at when John went down in the revenge tour that season, I think he missed 6 games, and Bubby Brister stepped in for him. And Bubby Brister, from all accounts, seems like a good old boy from the swamp. And they played well. They won. They had fun with him, and he wasn't John Elway. And to quote Shannon Sharp in the America's game, it's like, here's the keys to the Corvette. Just keep her at 30, and we'll be good to go. And Bubby Brister did that, and Coach Shanahan was able to relate to his players. He was able to get his players to feel calm, comfortable, and relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great comment. I definitely agree with you. And we got one of our superstars here coming in. Oh my gosh. You know what, John, I'm letting you do it. My hands are off here. I'm typically used to running to it. Pabby coming in. Hi guys. Just want to show some love. Can't stay for the whole pod. Appreciate all you guys do. Love the MHH family. Go Broncos. Pabby, we appreciate the heck out of you.
Thank you.
Say hello to Des Moines for me. Send me some of that Barntown Brewery beer, man. I'm missing that. They have some of the best New England style IPAs in the world, not to get too beer snobby out here.
Thank you, Pabby.
Appreciate the heck out of you. Kevin Peterson coming in here. Elway building the team the way he wanted it built when he was playing, surrounding Locke with everything he wanted, but Reeves wouldn't allow. I definitely think there's something to that. And I mean, Elway winning those Super Bowls, you saw it. He didn't just have the great running game. He didn't just have the good offensive line. He had the Shannon Sharp. He had Rod Smith. He had Eddie Mack. The defense was pretty darn good too. But when you can go to multiple different weapons, that means you can kind of dictate the directions you're going to go. You don't have to go to Cortland Sutton every single week because it was like that Detroit game where Darius Slay really gave Cortland Sutton all he could handle. Darius Slay had an incredible game. And the Broncos, they peppered the ball to Deshaun Hamilton, a lot of targets, but did he do much with it? The Broncos still won, but you really want to have guys that second and third option where if you have that great cornerback there, you can go a different direction. The Broncos just couldn't do that before, at least not striking fear in the opponent's hearts. Now they can. So I think that's a big thing. And I know that people are like, oh, man, the offensive line, defense, why do you keep using these draft picks, capital on these weapons? Well, now you've diversified the portfolio. You can attack many different ways, and that just makes you so much harder to prepare for.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I think about when you think about Mike Shanahan and Dan Reeves, why was Dan Reeves firing Mike Shanahan? And the famous quote from Dan Reeves, it's one word answer: insubordination. Is the answer he gave for getting rid of Mike Shanahan, who was John Elway's right-hand man. He was the guy that prepared with John Elway every single day, coaching him up. And Dan Reeves could feel this relationship growing, and things started to feel uncomfortable between Elway, Shanahan, and John Elway, Elway, Shanahan, and Reeves. And things eventually ended, and Shanahan and Elway rode off into the sunset with a couple of rings. Reeves, not so much. Ultimately got to the big game. But, you got to use the tools that you have, and you've got to know what you have. You're not going to know the players that you have until they're playing. You can only do so much simulation. You can only do so much virtual meetings, I guess. We're not even doing practice right now, so I'm not going to say we can only do so much practice, because practice would be a great thing. Everybody needs practice right now. But the Broncos need to be ready to work, because that's something else that Mike Shanahan prided himself on, was work ethic. You've got to be able to work one heartbeat and accountability. And say what you want about Mike Shanahan, he trusted his players, but if you dropped the ball, if you fumbled, if you threw a pick, if he felt like he couldn't trust you, you're getting benched. And players responded to that. And that's something I'd like the Broncos to get back to. And I think Vic Fangio's personality and this old school nature of having Vic, I think that's going to eventually start bringing accountability back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin Peterson coming back in here. Elway got derailed with Reeves. If he had Walsh as a head coach, it would have been laughable with the titles and the records. That's definitely a good point. I do wonder if Elway's athleticism and arm talent would have been showcased in that Bill Walsh offense, where it was much more about timing and precision. But that being said, Walsh, especially Jerry Rice there, that was that would have been good for Elway, no doubt. And also, we're bringing it back here to Mike Shanahan. I think a big interesting point that we haven't even touched on yet with Mike Shanahan is that he won back-to-back titles. And I was listening to an Urban Meyer interview on the Move the Sticks podcast the other day, where he was talking about how hard it is to motivate these guys. But the hardest thing in all of sports is to get your team to recommit, to refocus, and go after another title. After that first one, your guard is down. People change. I mean, the team changed. Not only the team changed, but those individual players change. Their work ethic changes. Their focus changes. And to be able to not only win that one title in 32, but to be able to go that next season, win against the Falcons, back-to-back titles. I mean, rare as it gets. Really rare as it gets. It's so hard to do that, especially when you're talking about a team or a sport where you have 53 guys. I mean, there's so much movement, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that they were able to win back-to-back, I don't think is discussed enough as this. Winning a Super Bowl is hard enough. Winning back-to-back, next to impossible. It just does not happen.
And I think the reason it's not brought up is because the Patriots have ruined everything for everybody, because they've gone on this crazy winning streak where they've got all these rings, and sometimes it's hard to even count how many they've got. 2 Super Bowls is no joke, especially when they're back to back. And the revenge tour that happened in 97, and then the let's just gear up and get after it in 98. I'm just going to ask you right now. Did Mike Shanahan and John Elway leave another championship on the table for that 2000 season? I mean, I know you've got the Baltimore Ravens with that nasty defense, and man, they beat up on the Broncos, something fierce. Shannon Sharp went over, to Baltimore in 2000, won a Super Bowl with them. And I love to put it out there to the rest of Broncos country. Could the Broncos have gone for a three-peat? I know that's asking a lot. And John's body was pretty much just done. You could just tell that his mind was still there, and he's the biggest competitor ever. But he was done. He was just done. But I can't help but wonder, Nick, could there have been three?
They should have won in 96. Honestly, that's the one looking back that when they lost to the Jags in the playoffs, that's the one that hurts. And that's God, I would have been in diapers at that point. But
that obviously propelled them to 97.
That's true. That's true. That's a good
right?
point.
Because without 96, I don't know that you get 97, because I agree. But 96, that's ultimately one of the best things that could have happened to the Broncos, as sickening as that sounds. And I get goosebumps saying that because it doesn't sound right. Losing to the Jags and Tom Coughlin's Jags in the AFC Championship was the best thing ever for Denver. It really was, because those guys came back mad. You said it earlier. When you're the champ and you've got the belt, life is easy. Defending that belt when you step in the ring, man, it's a whole nother game. Yeah, absolutely. And what is Mike Tyson's old quote? Everybody's got a game plan until you get punched in the face. And the Broncos were able to do that with guys that were beat up, Hall of Famers that couldn't see in the game and stuff like that. And it just shows the character and grit that Mike Shanahan had to not only keep this group together, but to lead and propel them into success.
I don't know. As we got Stoney and Neff coming in here, the Broncos definitely would have beat the Titans or the Rams in 99. I don't know if they were beating the greatest show on turf. Maybe that's a little bit of Iowa bias coming through here. Actually met Kurt Warner a few times, played soccer with his nieces and nephews here back in the Quad Cities. But that greatest show on turf would have been a hard one to beat. That's a team that's pretty fun looking back. I mean, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Marshall Falk, and Kurt Warner with Dick Vermeil. A lot of fun. Here's a good question here. We don't have much time left, so we'll see if there's any other comments that come in. Sometimes we get a last-minute super chat will come in, but this is one that I think will be interesting to discuss here. I think the answer is decently obvious, but is worth discussing. Robert Caslow coming in. Who will be the breakout wide receiver behind Sutton this season? And so I'll kick it off to you first. I'll give you the first one.
It's going to be their first-round pick. It's Jerry Judy. And Jerry Judy is a lot more than just running cone drills on Twitter. This guy's the real deal. I just can't wait to see him. He's putting in the work, which tells me that he's taking this seriously. Now, I don't like the fact that you've got to post your workouts on Twitter, otherwise it didn't happen. But I do like the fact that I'm seeing some improvements when I'm looking at these 30-second clips. I'm seeing tighter turns. I'm seeing shift in weight when you're cutting. The route tree looks as crisp as ever, but how can you not go Jerry Judy? The guy is just a freak. I think he's going to be one of Drew Lock's best friends in this offense, and maybe even off the field, because you've got to have that relationship, right? You've got to have some wide receiver quarterback friendship. It's developing with Cortland, and Cortland's going to welcome this young comer because it's going to take a lot of the heat off of him. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the wide receiver, the obvious one is Judy. But I'm going to break the rules here. I really think people are sleeping on Noah Fant this season. No, Iowa bias. I don't know. I think it's this offense as well. And yeah. I mean, Noah Fant, he is 21 or 22 years old. He's one of the youngest tight ends in football. Mm-hmm. He was playing with an injury last year. He had a leg injury that hampered him from the last Kansas City game on. You can see it in his gait. And I think, tight ends typically take a few years to kind of come of age. And Noah Fant, I think he's going to have so much space to work with. And if you're worrying about the speed on the outside and you get Noah Fant against a linebacker, good night. It's going to be an issue. So I think that the wide receiver choice would be Judy. I think Hamler's probably going to have a little bit of up and down this upcoming season. He's not even talking about young players. Hamler's only 20 years old, just a baby. But Noah Fant, I think this year is going to be a guy that I'm targeting him in all my fantasy leagues. I really think that Noah Fant is a guy is going to be a big one. He needs to be. People can't forget about this first-round pick. Now, last year he did come into training camp out of shape, and he was sick on the first few days, and I'm sitting there scratching my head like, come on now. But you've seen him pick it up. You've seen him respond to criticism. You see him fight the doubt. You see him. I like that. I like it a lot. I like him, but I'm hesitant because there's so much left to be desired. I think the sky is the limit for Noah Fant. You have to be right, Nick, because if you're not, it's another costly first-round pick that will cost the Denver Broncos moving forward. Well, I guess the question is then, who would you have rather had in that first-round pick at 20 based on who was on the table?
Because the guy that I really wanted in that first round, I'm quarterback or bust until you have a quarterback. The guy that I was head over heels for went one pick before at 19 with Jeffrey Simmons, who I think is going to end up one of the best interior defensive linemen in football. Watch for him, I guess, in that first week. Lloyd Cushenberry is going to have his hands full in that week 1 game against the Titans, assuming that we have that game. I
wouldn't have made the trade to answer your question. I wouldn't have made the trade.
I'm logging off. I
think I am, though. I think I would, because obviously Devin White would be my number 1, but he's not even going to be in the realm of conversation into the mid of the first round. But no, I think I am. I think everything I've heard that Coach really liked Bush. Could still use some help at linebacker. The Broncos have a million tight ends. So when I heard another Big Ten tight end, I'm thinking, man, I hope he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, get out of here, John. I see you in there. You guys, Noah Fant's going to kill it this year. He's going to be the dude. You watch. But we got one coming here. Would it have been better off keeping Simeon? I guess I'm confused what this is in context to. Specifically, if you could, add on to this. I do think that the Broncos would have been better not drafting Paxton Lynch at all and running with Simeon that season. The guy that I really wanted in that draft, again, my favorite position to scout is the interior defensive line. And I loved Chris Jones coming out of Mississippi State. I just must have a Mississippi State interior defensive line love. Fletcher Cox, loved him. Chris Jones, loved him. Jeffrey Simmons, loved him. All of them Mississippi State. Makes no sense. Man, Trevor Simeon, that would have been much better. Oh, instead of Keenum, I think that you probably, in hindsight, that makes sense. But I think the locker room was done with Trevor Simeon. I mean, I don't know how you could go back with that defense. There's still a lot of holdovers from that Super Bowl team and go a third season with Trevor Simeon. You know, they already saw what he was going to be. You would have completely lost that locker room before the season even started. You needed somebody else in there to kind of reshuffle it, in my opinion. I think that, Simeon, good guy, that by all way outperformed his draft slot. But you needed to reshuffle the deck there in the locker room.
Yeah, full disclosure, I was a Trevor Simeon guy. I'm not going to say he was the best thing ever, but I liked him a lot. I liked him way more than I liked Paxton Lynch. So, all the Paxton Lynch lovers that get the hate, I get it with Trevor Simeon too. I didn't want the Broncos to go out there and sign him to a big bucks, but ultimately the guy started seeing ghosts after some nasty, nasty hits. And once you start seeing ghosts as a quarterback, you don't stop. And yeah. it was time to move on. The guy was banged up. I think doctors said that shoulder injury that he had on his non-throwing arm was the equivalent to a 50-mile-per-hour car crash in terms of mechanism of injury. So the one thing you can say about Trevor, he's tough as nails. I think he also broke his ankle last year in a game for the Jets. That was Myles Garrett, I think, got him. So tough as nails. Not sure if he's going to have a lengthy NFL career, but Trevor Simeon, Pro Bowl quarterback for the Denver Broncos. A lot of people forget that as well.
Man, talk about watering down the Pro Bowls. I think next year, if not enough people accept it, I'm going to be looking for my Pro Bowl invite as quarterback. But guys, that's going to wrap it up today. We really do appreciate you all. You can find Luke on Twitter, again, at Luke Patterson LP. You can find myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you go over to milehighhuddle.com, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Guys, we're trying to get to 10K before the start of the season. Fingers crossed, who knows? We passed 7K, but we'll see what happens there. But in order to do that, guess what you got to do? Subscribe, like, and share. If you appreciate the show, we'd appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share. Drop a like right now on Facebook or a heart react, Either way, I'll take it. I see we have a wow react too. I'll take it. I like it. But go to iTunes as well. Leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. You can follow the Mile High Insiders podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to this show wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at MHI Football Pod. Luke, anything you want to, any words of wisdom, funny anecdotes before we get on out of here? Any Mike Shanahan anecdotes?
Yeah, just on a personal note for me, I'm really happy to see Coach go in. Coach Shanahan, I got to play for Dave Logan, the voice of the Broncos, here at Mullen High School in Denver, Colorado. And my sophomore year, Coach Shanahan and Steve Watson, wide receiver for the Broncos. And then at the time, wide receiver coach came in with Tom tons of Under Armour gear from the Broncos that said One Heartbeat on it. I still have it. Gave us a phenomenal speech talking about brotherhood, loyalty, things of that nature. And when you're a 15-year-old kid just trying to strap it up and learn the game and to see your heroes come in, really, really special. Coach always makes time for those in Broncos country. So really proud of Mike Shanahan, and it's a great show, Nick.
Yeah, and any of you giant football nerds out there, if you go onto YouTube, you can find some Mike Shanahan coaching clinics out there where he discusses the zone stretch and the zone scheme. I believe he breaks down it's the Dallas Cowboys and DeMarco Murray and just like gives on a full-on just love fest with the Dallas offensive line. But you really can pick up a lot from those coaches' clinics, and it's out there on YouTube, so go find it. It's worth a watch if you are going to be the biggest of the big nerds. And guys, again, that's Summit. Sorry, guys, I think Summit just went outside. Everyone remember to head to milehighhuddle.com. Oh, we got Bronco for Life, Sconey, coming in with a beautiful golden retriever. Appreciate you. And guys, that's going to do it. We appreciate it. Carl and I will be back on Saturday. But for now, it's going to wrap up the Mile High Insiders. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
Later.